Captain Jake Morrison stood at the large window of his ship's bridge, looking out at the endless black space filled with tiny white stars. His ship, the Aurora, had been traveling through space for 3 months now, far from Earth and far from any other human settlements. The crew of 87 people had been checking different star systems, looking for planets that might be good for humans to live on someday. Jake was 42 years old and had been a space captain for 15 years. He had short brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the sides, and calm blue eyes that had seen many strange things in space. Today, those eyes were focused on something that made no sense at all. "Captain, you need to see this," said Dr. Lisa Carter, walking up to him with a worried look on her face. Lisa was the ship's science officer, a woman in her 30s with long red hair and green eyes that were always curious about everything around her. She had been studying space signals for the past week, and now she looked like she had found something important. "What is it, Lisa?" Jake asked, turning away from the window to look at her. "We're getting a signal from the third planet in this system," Lisa said, holding up a small computer tablet. "The problem is that planet is completely dead. No air, no water, no life at all. But something down there is sending us a message." Jake took the tablet and looked at the numbers and patterns on the screen. To him, it looked like random noise, but he knew Lisa was much smarter than him when it came to this kind of thing. "Are you sure it's not just natural space noise?" Lisa shook her head. "No, Captain. This is definitely made by someone. Look at these patterns here." She pointed to different parts of the screen. They repeat every 14 hours and 42 minutes. Natural signals don't do that, and there's something else. She touched the screen and a new set of numbers appeared. Hidden in all this noise is something we recognize. It's the number pi, calculated out to more decimal places than most computers can handle. Whatever sent this signal knows advanced math. Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. In all his years of space travel, humans had never found any sign of other intelligent life. Now, here was proof that someone else was out there, or at least had been out there at some point. "How long has this signal been broadcasting?" he asked. "Based on the power levels and the way it's degrading, I'd say maybe 1,000 years, possibly longer," Lisa said. "Captain, I think we're looking at a message from a dead civilization." Lieutenant Commander Rick Davis walked over to them. Rick was the ship's security officer, a tall man with black hair and dark eyes who always seemed to expect trouble. He had been listening to their conversation, and now he looked very concerned. "Captain, I don't like this," Rick said. "If there was an intelligent species on that planet and they're all dead now, something killed them. Maybe we should get out of here before we find out what it was." Jake understood Rick's worry, but he also knew this was the most important discovery in human history. "What do you think, Lisa? Is there any danger in getting closer to study this signal?" Lisa looked at her tablet again, then back at Jake. "The signal is definitely coming from the planet's surface, not from space. I don't detect any ships or active technology that could hurt us, but Rick has a point. If an entire civilization died out, we should find out why before we get too close." Jake walked back to the window and looked out at the planet they were talking about. From this distance, it looked like a small brown ball, nothing special about it at all. But if Lisa was right, that little ball had once been home to people, smart enough to do advanced mathematics and build technology that could broadcast signals across space. "Amy, open a channel to Earth Command," Jake said to Lieutenant Amy Foster, the ship's communications officer. Amy was a young woman with short blonde hair and bright blue eyes. She was only 26, but was already one of the best communications experts in the space fleet. "Channel open, Captain," Amy said from her station across the bridge. "Earth Command, this is Captain Morrison aboard the Aurora. We have discovered what appears to be an artificial signal coming from a dead planet in the Kepler 442 system. Request permission to investigate further." The response took 20 minutes because of the distance to Earth. When it came, the voice belonged to Admiral Helen Burke, Jake's old commanding officer. "Morrison, this is Burke. Did you say artificial signal from a dead planet?" "Yes, Admiral. Dr. Carter has confirmed it contains advanced mathematical sequences. This appears to be our first contact with non-human intelligence. Another long pause. Then Burke's voice came back, more serious than before. Morrison, you are authorized to investigate, but use extreme caution. If you find any sign of danger, you pull back immediately. Do you understand? Understood, Admiral. Aurora out. Jake turned to face his crew. All right, people. We're going to make history today. Lisa, I want you to keep analyzing that signal. Look for any other information hidden in it. Rick, put the ship on yellow alert. Amy, monitor all frequencies for any changes in the signal or any new transmissions. And everyone else, keep your eyes open. The Aurora began moving toward the dead planet. As they got closer, the signal became stronger and clearer. Lisa spent hours at her computer, pulling apart the mathematical patterns and looking for more hidden messages. Captain, she called out after several hours of work, I'm finding more patterns in the signal. It's not just mathematics. There are star charts. Star charts? Jake asked, walking over to her station. Yes, sir. Maps of star systems. And Captain, one of them is our solar system. This signal knows where Earth is. The bridge became very quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Lisa. How is that possible? Amy asked. I don't know, Lisa said. But whoever sent? This signal had detailed knowledge of our part of the galaxy. They knew about our sun, our planets, even the positions of the larger asteroids. Rick stepped forward. Captain, this is getting more dangerous by the minute. An unknown alien species. Knew about Earth 1,000 years ago. We need to assume they might have been watching us. Jake nodded, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. Lisa, is there anything else in the signal? Lisa worked at her computer for another hour while the ship continued toward the planet. Finally, she looked up with a pale face. Captain, there's more, much more. The signal contains what looks like historical records, technical specifications for advanced technology, and something else. Something that looks like a warning. A warning about what? I'm not sure yet, but it mentions something called the Devourers. The translation is rough, but it seems to be describing something that destroys entire worlds. Jake felt that cold feeling in his stomach again, but now it was much stronger. How long until we reach the planet? 6 hours, Captain, replied Ben Clark, the ship's navigator. Good, Lisa. I want you to decode as much of that signal as possible before we get there. Rick, run a full diagnostic on all our weapons and shields. Amy, start recording everything. If something happens to us, Earth Command needs to know what. We found, as the Aurora continued toward the dead planet, Jake stood at the window again, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, something called the Devourers had destroyed an entire civilization. And now, humanity might be next on their list. The signal from the dead world continued to broadcast its ancient warning, hoping someone would hear it and understand the danger that was coming. Jake Morrison and his crew were about to become the first humans to receive that warning, and what they learned would change everything. The Aurora moved slowly through space toward the dead planet. Captain Jake Morrison had not slept in 18 hours. He stood in the ship's main laboratory, watching Dr. Lisa Carter work at 3 different computers at the same time. Her red hair was messy and her green eyes were tired, but she kept working on the alien signal. Captain, I think I've found something big, Lisa said, not looking up from her screens. The signal isn't just a message, it's like a whole library of information. Jake walked closer to see what she had discovered. The screen showed thousands of symbols and patterns that made no sense to him, but Lisa seemed to understand them. What kind of information? He asked. Everything, Lisa said, finally looking at him. History, science, technology, even stories. And music. This civilization recorded their entire culture in this signal before they died. Lieutenant Amy Foster came running into the lab. Her young face was excited but also scared. Captain, Dr. Carter, you need to come to the bridge right now. I've found something in the signal that you both need to see. They followed Amy to the bridge, where she had set up her equipment to show the signal on the main screen. I've been trying to decode the parts that Dr. Carter hasn't gotten to yet, Amy said. Look at this. The screen showed a series of pictures that moved like a very old movie. The pictures showed a beautiful blue and green planet with white clouds. Much like Earth, there were cities with tall buildings and flying vehicles. Then the pictures changed, showing the same planet, but now it was brown and dead, with huge holes in the ground where the cities used to be. This is their home planet, Amy said. They recorded what happened to them. Dr. Ben Clark, the ship's navigator, was also on the bridge. He was a quiet man with gray hair who rarely spoke unless he had something important to say. Captain, we're now close enough to scan the planet's surface. I'm detecting massive crater patterns and the remains of what look like cities. Put it on the screen, Jake ordered. The main screen changed to show the planet below them. It was exactly like the pictures in the alien signal. The surface was covered with enormous craters, and between them were the broken remains of buildings and roads. Whatever had happened here had been complete and terrible. My God, Lisa whispered. An entire civilization just gone. Lieutenant Commander Rick Davis had been standing quietly in the corner, but now he stepped forward. Captain, I've been analyzing the crater patterns. These weren't made by natural disasters or even nuclear weapons. Something was systematically destroying everything on this planet. Something that came from space. Jake felt his stomach turn cold again. The Devourers? I think so, Rick said. Based on the size and pattern of the craters, whatever did this had ships the size of cities. They bombarded this planet for months, maybe years, until nothing was left alive. Amy worked at her station trying to decode more of the signal. Captain, I'm getting more information. The signal contains what looks like a timeline. A timeline of what? Jake asked. Of the attack. And Captain, it also contains predictions. The aliens who sent this signal were trying to warn someone about when the Devourers would strike again. Lisa ran back to her lab and brought back a portable computer. She connected it to Amy's equipment and began working. If Amy is right, and this is a timeline, then we can figure out when these Devourers destroyed this planet and when they might attack again. The bridge was quiet except for the sound of Lisa typing on her computer. Everyone watched as she worked, afraid of what she might find. Captain, Lisa said after 20 minutes. According to this timeline, the Devourers destroyed this planet about 1,050 years ago. But that's not the scary part. What's the scary part? Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. The timeline shows a pattern. The Devourers move from star system to star system, destroying everything in their path. Based on this pattern, they should reach Earth's solar system in about 47 years. The bridge became completely silent. Everyone stared at Lisa, hoping they had heard her wrong. Are you sure about this? Jake asked. I've checked the calculations 5 times, Lisa said. The pattern is clear. The Devourers are like a plague that moves through space, consuming everything in their path. And we're next. Dr. Ben Clark spoke up. Captain, if Dr. Carter is right, then this signal isn't just a message from a dead civilization. It's a warning meant for us. Amy was still working at her station. Captain, I'm finding more information. The signal contains detailed descriptions of the Devourers. They're not just one species. They're a collection of different alien races that work together to destroy and consume other worlds. What do you mean by consume? Rick asked. Amy read from her screen. According to this, the Devourers don't just destroy planets. They take everything. All the metal, all the water, all the life. They use it to build more ships and to feed their population. After they're done with a planet, there's nothing left but dead rock. Jake sat down in his captain's chair. In just a few hours, they had gone from discovering the first signs of alien life to learning that humanity had less than 50 years before being destroyed by an alien army. Amy, send an emergency message to Earth Command, Jake ordered. Tell them we need to speak with Admiral Burke immediately. This is a priority 1 situation. Yes, Captain, Amy said, working at her controls while they waited for the message. To reach Earth, Lisa continued studying the alien signal. Captain, I'm finding technical information too. The aliens who lived here were very advanced. They had technology that we don't even understand yet. What kind of technology? Jake asked. Energy. Weapons, force fields, faster than light travel, and something called adaptive matter, Lisa said. It's all here in their records. They were trying to develop weapons to fight the Devourers, but they ran out of time. Dr. Ben Clark was studying the planet's surface with the ship's sensors. Captain, I'm detecting some structures that are still intact. They're deep underground, probably built to survive the attack. Could there be survivors? Jake asked. I don't think so, Ben said. The atmosphere is completely gone and there's no power coming from any of the structures. But there might be information stored there. Maybe even technology. Jake thought about this. Going to the planet's surface would be dangerous, but the information they might find could be crucial for Earth's survival. Rick, what's your opinion? Jake asked his security officer. It's risky, Rick said. But if there's technology down there that could help us fight the Devourers, we have to try. We might be humanity's only hope of getting this information back to Earth. Amy's station made a sound indicating that Earth Command was responding to their message. Admiral Burke's voice came through the speakers. Morrison, this is Burke. Your message says you found evidence of hostile aliens that will attack Earth. Please confirm. Jake stood up and walked to the communications station. Admiral, it's confirmed. We found the remains of an alien civilization that was destroyed by something called the Devourers. Based on the information we've decoded, these Devourers are heading for Earth and will arrive in approximately 47 years. There was a long pause before Burke responded. Morrison, I need you to send all the data you've collected immediately. And I need you to gather as much additional information as possible. The President and the UN Security Council will need to see everything. Understood, Admiral. We're preparing to investigate structures on the planet's surface. We believe there may be additional information and possibly technology that could help us prepare for the Devourer's arrival. Be careful, Morrison. If what you're telling me is true, then you and your crew are carrying the most important information in human history. Don't take any unnecessary risks. Copy that, Admiral. Aurora out. Jake turned to face his crew. You heard the Admiral? We're going to the surface. Lisa, prepare a team to investigate those underground structures. Rick, I want full security protocols. Amy, keep monitoring the signal for any changes. As the Aurora prepared to land on the dead planet, Jake looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, an alien force was moving toward Earth, just as they had moved toward this world 1,000 years ago. But this time, humanity would have warning. This time, they would be ready. The signal from the dead world continued to broadcast its ancient warning, and finally someone was listening. The message from the Aurora reached Earth and caused complete chaos. Admiral Helen Burke sat in her office at Earth Command, reading the report for the 5th time. Her hands were shaking as she picked up the phone to call President Catherine. Wells, Madam President, we have a situation, Burke said when the President answered. I'm sending you a classified report from one of our deep space exploration ships. You need to read it immediately. President Wells was in her office in Washington, dealing with normal problems like trade agreements and budget meetings. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and tired eyes from dealing with the world's problems every day. But when she read the report from the Aurora, all her normal problems suddenly seemed very small. Admiral, are you telling me that aliens are going to attack Earth in 47 years? The President asked. Yes, Madam President. Our ship found proof that an alien civilization was completely destroyed by something called the Devourers. The evidence suggests Earth is their next target. The President was quiet for a long moment. Admiral, I'm calling an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. I need you to bring every expert we have on alien technology and space defense. And Admiral, not a word of this to anyone else until we figure out what to do. While the leaders on Earth were trying to understand the threat, Captain Jake Morrison and his crew were preparing to land on the dead planet. They had found several underground structures that might contain important information or Technology. Dr. Lisa Carter was putting on her environmental suit, getting ready to explore the planet's surface. The suit would protect her from the deadly radiation and lack of air on the dead world. Captain, I've identified 3 locations where we might find intact computer systems or data storage devices. Lieutenant Commander Rick Davis was also suiting up, along with 4 other crew members who would provide security for the exploration team. Dr. Carter, I want you to stay close to the team at all times. We don't know what we might find down there. The Aurora landed near the largest of the underground structures. From the surface, it looked like a huge metal dome that had been buried under rocks and dirt. The team used their equipment to cut a hole in the dome and climb down into the darkness below. Inside the structure, they found rooms filled with strange machines and computers. Everything was covered in dust and had been shut down for over 1,000 years, but the alien technology was so advanced that much of it was still in perfect condition. My God, Lisa whispered as she looked around with her flashlight. This is like a time capsule. Everything is exactly as they left it. Rick kept his weapon ready as they moved through the corridors. The walls were covered with writing in the alien language, and there were pictures that seemed to tell the story of the civilization that had lived here. Dr. Carter, over here, called out Sergeant Kevin Brown, one of the security team members. He was pointing his flashlight at a large room filled with what looked like computer servers. Lisa ran over to the room and began examining the machines. These are data storage devices. If I can figure out how to turn them on, we might be able to access all their information. She connected her portable computer to one of the alien machines and began trying to figure out how it worked. After 2 hours of careful work, the alien computers began to glow with soft blue light. It's working, Lisa said excitedly. I'm getting access to their files. What she found was amazing. The alien computers contained detailed information about the Devourers, including pictures of their ships and descriptions of their weapons. But more importantly, they contained plans for advanced defensive technology. Rick, you need to see this, Lisa said, showing him her computer screen. The aliens who lived here were working on weapons that could fight the Devourers. They called it Project Last Hope. Rick looked at the screen, which showed designs for weapons unlike anything humans had ever built. What kind of weapons? Energy cannons that can destroy entire ships with one shot. Force fields that can protect whole cities, and something called adaptive matter, which can change its shape and properties to defend against any attack. Meanwhile, on Earth, the emergency meeting of the UN Security Council was taking place in a secure conference room in New York. President Wells sat at the head of the table, surrounded by the leaders of the world's major nations. Admiral Burke stood at the front of the room with Dr. Robert Lynch, Earth's leading expert on theoretical physics. Ladies and gentlemen, President Wells began, what I'm about to tell you will change everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. She nodded to Admiral Burke, who began presenting the evidence from the Aurora. The world leaders listened in stunned silence as Burke explained about the alien signal, the destroyed civilization, and the approaching threat of the Devourers. You're telling us that aliens are coming to destroy Earth? Asked the Prime Minister. Of Britain, a man named Charles Parker, who was known for being very practical and logical. That's exactly what I'm telling you, Burke replied. Our analysis shows that the Devourers follow a predictable pattern. They move from star system to star system, destroying everything in their path. Based on their previous targets, Earth is next. Dr. Lynch stepped forward. I've reviewed all the data from the Aurora. The mathematical calculations are correct. The alien technology is real. And the timeline points to an attack on Earth in approximately 47 years. The Russian president? Vladimir Petrov leaned forward. What are our options? We have 2 choices, President Wells said. We can try to hide from the Devourers and hope they don't find us, or we can prepare to fight them. How do we fight aliens with technology thousands of years ahead of ours? Asked the Chinese Premier Li Wei. Admiral Burke smiled for the first time since the meeting began. That's where things get interesting. We haven't been completely honest with the world about our military capabilities. She pressed a button on her remote control, and the wall screen showed pictures of weapons and ships that looked like they came from science fiction movies. For the past 20 years, we've been developing advanced military technology in secret. We call it Project Prometheus. We've been preparing for the possibility of hostile alien contact. The room erupted in surprised voices as the world leaders saw plasma cannons, energy shields, and ships that looked nothing like anything publicly known. Why wasn't the UN informed of this? Demanded the French President Marie Dubois. Because we needed to develop the technology first, Burke replied. We've been working on quantum weapons, adaptive defenses, and faster-than-light travel. The threat of the Devourers has simply moved up our timeline. Back on the dead planet, Lisa and Rick had found something that made their discovery even more important. Deep in the alien computer files, they found detailed plans for a type of matter that could change its properties instantly. "Rick, this is incredible," Lisa said, her voice shaking with excitement. "This adaptive matter can become anything we need it to be. It can form into weapons, shields, or even repair damaged ships. It's like having a universal building material." Rick was reading over her shoulder. "How do we make it?" "The formula is all here," Lisa said. "It requires materials that we have on Earth, but the manufacturing process is extremely complex. We would need to build special facilities just to create this stuff." Above them, the Aurora received an urgent message from Earth Command. Captain Morrison read it and immediately called his team back to the ship. "Team, we're leaving immediately," Jake announced over the radio. "Earth Command has ordered us to return with all the information we've gathered. The President and the UN Security Council are waiting for our report." As the Aurora prepared to leave the dead planet, Lisa looked back at the alien ruins one last time. "We're really going to do this, aren't we? We're going to prepare for war against aliens?" Jake nodded grimly. "We don't have a choice. But at least now we have warning, and we have their technology to help us." The Aurora lifted off from the dead planet and began its journey back to Earth. In the ship's computer banks were the complete records of an advanced alien civilization, including detailed plans for weapons that could fight the Devourers on Earth. The world's leaders were making the biggest decision in human history. They would not hide from the approaching threat. They would prepare to fight, using technology that had been developed in secret and alien knowledge that had been waiting for 1,000 years to be discovered. The warning from the dead world had been received, and humanity was about to unleash its full power for the first time in its history. 3 years had passed since the Aurora returned from the dead planet with its terrible news. Earth had changed completely during those 3 years. What had once been a peaceful world focused on exploration and trade was now the biggest military construction site in human history. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral, stood in the command center of the new Deep Space Defense Station. The station floated in space between Earth and Mars, and it was unlike anything humans had ever built before. It was 5 miles long and 2 miles wide, bristling with weapons that had been designed using both human and alien technology. "Admiral, the latest production reports are in," said Captain Amy Foster, who had also been promoted after their discovery. She was now in charge of coordinating all the defense construction projects throughout the solar system. "We now have over 2,000 ships in the defense fleet, and that number is growing by 50 ships every month." Jake looked out through the station's main window at the incredible sight before him. Hundreds of ships moved through space around the station. Some were traditional human designs that had been upgraded with new weapons. Others were completely new ships built from the alien plans they had found. The strangest ones were made from adaptive matter, looking like liquid metal that could change shape as needed. "What about the Mars colonies?" Jake asked. "All civilian populations have been moved to the underground cities," Amy replied. "The surface facilities have been converted to weapons manufacturing. The asteroid belt mining operations are now producing raw materials at 10 times the normal rate." Dr. Lisa Carter walked into the command center carrying a tablet computer. She looked tired but excited. Lisa had spent the last 3 years leading the team that was figuring out how to build the alien technology. Her red hair was now shorter, and had some gray in it, but her green eyes still sparkled with curiosity. "Admiral, I have news about the Adaptive Matter project," Lisa said. "We finally figured out how to mass produce it. The first batch of Adaptive Matter ships will be ready for testing next month," Jake smiled. The adaptive matter technology had been the hardest part of the alien plans to understand. It was a substance that could change its molecular structure instantly, becoming harder than diamond for armor, or flowing like liquid to repair damage, or reshaping itself into any tool or weapon needed. "How many ships will we be able to build with adaptive matter?" Jake asked. "If the tests go well, we should be able to retrofit every ship in the fleet within 2 years," Lisa said. "But that's not the best part. We've also figured out how to make adaptive matter weapons platforms. They can change from defensive shields to offensive weapons in seconds." Lieutenant Commander Rick Davis, now a full colonel in charge of fleet tactics, entered the command center. His black hair was now completely gray, and his face showed the stress of preparing for the biggest war in human history. "Admiral, we've finished training the new fleet commanders," Rick said. "They're as ready as we can make them. But I have to be honest with you. Even with all our new technology, fighting the Devourers is going to be incredibly difficult." Jake nodded. The alien records had shown them exactly what they were up against. The Devourers traveled in fleets of ships that were each the size of small cities. Their weapons could destroy entire planets, and they had been conquering civilizations for thousands of years. "What's our biggest advantage?" Jake asked. "Mobility and adaptation," Rick replied. "The Devourers are used to fighting civilizations that stay on their home planets and try to defend them. We're going to meet them in deep space, far from Earth, and our adaptive matter technology will let us change our tactics in the middle of battle." Amy's communication station began beeping with an urgent message. "Admiral, we're getting a priority. Transmission from Earth Command." "Put it through," Jake ordered, the voice of Admiral Helen Burke. Now, the Supreme Commander of Earth Defense Forces came through the speakers. "Morrison, we've detected movement at the edge of the solar system. Long-range sensors show large objects approaching from the direction the alien records predicted." Jake felt his stomach drop. "How much time do we have?" "Based on their current speed, the Devourers will reach the outer solar system in 6 months," Burke replied. "All defense forces are ordered to begin final preparations immediately." The command center became busy as everyone began implementing the plans they had been preparing for 3 years. Jake activated the station's general communications system. "Attention all defense forces," Jake announced. "This is Admiral Morrison. The enemy has been detected approaching our solar system. Operation Last Stand is now in effect. All ships and stations are to move to their assigned positions immediately." Throughout the solar system, the largest military force in human history began moving into position. The plan was simple but dangerous. 3 defensive lines would meet the Devourers at different points, giving humanity multiple chances to stop them before they reached Earth. The first line of defense was positioned at the edge of the solar system, near the orbit of Pluto. This force consisted of the fastest ships, designed to hit the Devourers hard and then retreat quickly. Their job was to slow down the enemy and gather information about their tactics. The second line was in the asteroid belt, where humanity had built the most powerful weapons platforms. The asteroids themselves had been turned into giant fortresses, equipped with energy cannons that could destroy ships from millions of miles away. The third and final line was between Mars and Earth. This was where the adaptive matter ships would make their stand. If the Devourers made it this far, humanity would throw everything they had at them. Dr. Lisa Carter was working frantically to finish the last of the adaptive matter ships. "Admiral, I need to show you something," she said, leading Jake to the station's main hangar. Inside the hangar was a ship unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It looked like it was made of silver liquid that was constantly shifting and flowing. As they watched, the ship changed shape, growing extra weapon ports and armor plating. "This is our prototype adaptive matter battleship," Lisa explained. "We Call it the Phoenix. It can rebuild itself even if it's almost completely destroyed. Watch this. She pressed a button on her control pad, and part of the ship's hull suddenly developed a large hole as if it had been hit by a weapon. Then, like magic, the hole began to close up as the ship's matter flowed back together. How many of these can we build? Jake asked, amazed by what he was seeing. We have enough adaptive matter to build 50 ships this size, Lisa said. Each one will be worth 100 normal ships in battle. Meanwhile, on the outer edge of the solar system, the advanced scout ships were getting their first look at the enemy. Captain Dan Miller, commander of the scout ship Eagle, stared at his sensor readings in shock. "Command, this is Eagle," he transmitted back to Earth. "I'm looking at the Devourer fleet and it's bigger than we expected. I count over 300 ships, and some of them are the size of entire cities. The largest Devourer ships were black, metal monsters that looked like they could swallow planets. Smaller ships swarmed around them like insects, and the entire fleet moved through space with the unstoppable force of a hurricane. Eagle, this is Morrison," Jake's voice came back. "Can you estimate their weapons capabilities?" "Admiral, these ships are armed with weapons we can't even identify," Captain Miller replied. "But based on their size and the energy readings I'm getting, they could probably destroy our biggest ships with a single shot." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The survival of humanity depended on the plans they had made and the technology they had built. In 6 months, the greatest battle in human history would begin. "All forces, this is Admiral Morrison," he announced to the entire defense fleet. "We've seen the enemy, and they're everything the alien records said they would be. But we have something they don't expect. We have technology that can adapt to anything they throw at us. We have the determination of a species fighting for its home, and we have each other." As the months passed, both sides prepared for the coming battle. The Devourers continued their slow approach toward Earth, confident that they would destroy humanity just as they had destroyed thousands of other civilizations, but humanity was ready to show them something they had never encountered before. For the first time in their history, the Devourers were about to face a species that refused to give up and had the technology to fight back. The day humanity had been preparing for finally arrived. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, the flagship of the human defense fleet. Around him, over 2,000 ships waited in the darkness of space near the orbit of Pluto. This was the first line of defense, and Jake knew that what happened in the next few hours would decide the fate of the human race. "Admiral, the Devourer fleet is entering our sensor range," reported Captain Amy Foster from her position at the communications station. 317 ships confirmed, with the largest being over 20 miles long. Jake looked out at the approaching enemy through the main window. Even from this distance, the Devourer ships were visible as dark shapes that blocked out the stars. They moved in perfect formation like a swarm of metal death heading straight for Earth. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," Jake announced over the fleet communications. "Remember your training? Hit them fast, hit them hard, and then get out. We're not trying to win this battle. We're trying to learn how they fight and slow them down for the next defensive line." The first shots of the war came from the human fleet. Hundreds of energy weapons fired at once, lighting up space with beams of pure destruction. The quantum torpedoes that Dr. Lisa Carter had helped develop phased through space and struck the Devourer ships directly, but the Devourers were ready. Their ships activated energy shields that absorbed most of the human weapons fire. The few shots that got through barely scratched their thick armor. "Direct hits on multiple enemy ships," reported Colonel Rick Davis, who was commanding the tactical systems, "but we're not doing much damage. Their defenses are stronger than we expected." The Devourers began firing back, and the human fleet got its first taste of alien weapons technology. Beams of red energy swept through space, and any human ship they touched simply vanished. Not destroyed, not blown apart, but completely erased as if it had never existed. "We're losing ships fast," Amy called out. "The Montana and the Beijing just disappeared completely." Jake made a quick decision. "All ships begin evasive maneuvers." Activate the adaptive matter defenses. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Throughout the human fleet, ships began changing shape. The adaptive matter in their hulls flowed like liquid, creating new armor patterns and defense systems. Some ships grew thicker hulls, others sprouted additional weapons, and a few even split apart into smaller, faster vessels. The Devourers had never seen anything like it. Their targeting systems, designed to lock onto solid ship structures, couldn't keep up with targets that were constantly changing shape. Human ships that should have been destroyed instead adapted their hulls to deflect the alien weapons. "It's working," Rick said with excitement. "The adaptive matter is protecting us from their weapons. Our ships are taking hits but not being destroyed." But Jake knew they couldn't stay and fight. The first defensive line was meant to hit and run, not to engage in a full battle. "All ships begin withdrawal to the asteroid belt. Execute the plan." The human fleet began retreating toward the inner solar system, but they didn't run away like a beaten enemy. Instead, they fought a running battle, striking at the Devourers and then adapting their ships to avoid return fire. It was unlike anything the Devourers had encountered in thousands of years of conquest. "Admiral, we're getting reports from the second defensive line," Amy said. "The asteroid fortresses are ready and waiting." The human fleet reached the asteroid belt where the second phase of the defense plan began. Humanity had spent 3 years turning the largest asteroids into weapons platforms. As the Devourer fleet followed the humans into the asteroid belt, they found themselves surrounded by hidden weapons. "Fire all batteries," ordered General Paul Martinez from the main asteroid fortress. Hundreds of energy cannons opened fire from concealed positions throughout the asteroid belt. The Devourers, who had been focused on chasing the human fleet, suddenly found themselves under attack from all directions. The asteroid weapons were much more powerful than the ship-based guns. They used the alien energy technology that Lisa Carter's team had developed, and they hit the Devourer ships with enough force to actually damage their armor. "We're getting through their shields," reported Dr. Sandra Powell from the Asteroid Fortress Control Center. "The concentrated fire is working, but the Devourers adapted quickly." Their largest ships began targeting the asteroids themselves, using their planet-destroying weapons to blast entire asteroids into dust. The human defenders watched in horror as weapons platforms that had taken months to build were destroyed in seconds. "They're destroying our fixed defenses," General Martinez reported. "We need to fall back to the third line." Jake ordered the retreat to the final defensive position between Mars and Earth. This was where humanity would make its last stand. The adaptive matter ships of the third defensive line were the most advanced vessels humans had ever built, but they were also the last hope. As the Devourer fleet approached Earth's neighborhood, something unexpected happened. Dr. Lisa Carter, who had been monitoring the alien ships from her research station, made a crucial discovery. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the Devourer communications during the battle," Lisa announced over the fleet communications. "They use quantum entanglement to coordinate their fleet movements. All their ships are connected through a single communication network." "What does that mean for us?" Jake asked. "It means they have a weakness," Lisa said excitedly. "If we can disrupt their quantum communication network, their ships will lose coordination. They'll become confused and unable to work together effectively." Rick looked at the tactical display. "How do we disrupt quantum entanglement?" "The adaptive matter," Lisa explained. "We can use it to create a quantum interference field. But we need to get close to their command ship to make it work." Jake understood immediately. It was a desperate plan, but it might be their only chance. "All adaptive matter ships form up on the Phoenix. We're going to try something that's either brilliant or completely insane." The 50 adaptive matter ships began changing shape, flowing together to form a single massive construct. It looked like a giant metal cloud that sparkled with energy. This was humanity's secret weapon, something the Devourers had never encountered before. "Take us straight at their command ship," Jake ordered. The adaptive matter construct charged directly at the largest Devourer vessel, ignoring the weapons fire from the smaller ships. As enemy beams struck the construct, it simply flowed around the damage, healing itself instantly and continuing forward. "We're through their outer defenses," Amy reported, approaching the command ship now. "Activate the quantum interference field," Lisa commanded. The adaptive matter construct suddenly expanded, forming a web of energy that surrounded the Devourer command ship. The quantum interference field disrupted the alien communication network, and across the battlefield, the coordinated Devourer fleet began to fall apart. "It's working," Rick shouted. "The enemy ships are losing formation. They're firing on each other by mistake." Without their quantum communication network, the Devourers were just individual ships with no way to coordinate their attacks. The human fleet, still outnumbered but no longer facing a unified enemy, began picking off the confused alien vessels one by one. The battle raged for hours, but slowly the tide turned in humanity's favor. The adaptive matter technology proved superior to anything the Devourers had encountered. Human ships that were destroyed simply reformed from spare adaptive matter, while the alien vessels, once damaged, stayed damaged. As the last Devourer ship was destroyed, a strange silence fell over the solar system. For the first time in thousands of years, the Devourers had been completely defeated. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," Jake announced to the fleet. "The enemy has been destroyed. Earth is safe." The celebration that followed could be heard across every human settlement in the solar system. Humanity had not only survived its first encounter with a hostile alien civilization, but had won a complete victory. Dr. Lisa Carter looked at the data from the battle and smiled. "Jake, do you realize what we've done? We've not just saved Earth, we've stopped the Devourers from destroying any more civilizations. The galaxy is safer because of what we did here today." Jake nodded, thinking about the alien signal that had started it all. A dead civilization had sent a warning across space and time, hoping someone would hear it and prepare. That warning had given humanity the chance it needed to unleash its full power. The SOS from a dead world had indeed made humanity show what it was truly capable of. And what humanity was capable of was more than anyone had ever imagined.